Another bombshell sexual harassment allegation rocks Capitol Hill. This time a sitting senator is the accused. Al Franken, a Democrat from Minnesota, has apologized after a woman came forward with damning accusations today. Leeann Tweeden, a news anchor at a radio station in L.A., accuses a senator of harassing and groping her when they were on a USO tour together in 2006 before Franken was a member of Congress. And she has some proof. She posted this picture along with a column titled, "Senator Al Franken kissed and groped me without my consent, and there's nothing funny about it." Here is more from Tweeden.
He came at me, and before I even knew it, he put his hand on the back of my head and came towards me and mashed his face against my mouth and stuck his tongue in my mouth. And, you know, I sort of pushed him back and I said, "Don't ever do that to me again." And I was so angry, and I walked out of there.
Franken doesn't deny some of the allegations. Along with his apology, he said this in a statement: "I respect women. I don't respect men who don't. I don't know what was in my head when I took that picture, and it doesn't matter. There is no excuse. I look at it now and I feel disgusted with myself. It isn't funny. It's completely inappropriate." Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has called for an ethics committee investigation of Franken, and so has the senator himself. He says he will gladly cooperate. A second accuser named Melanie Morgan also came forward today alleging Franken harassed her years ago. All right, indeed, a rapidly developing story, Greg, because we have two accusations now and also proof. We were talking about this yesterday with the juxtaposition of Roy Moore, and people wanting, okay, let's do a full due process investigation, find out what's going on. She's come forward with the proof. A picture, they say, is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, I have to say, I know Leeann going way back. She's a good friend of mine. She used to do Red Eye all the time. She once gave me combat boots for Christmas. So she's no snowflake. So clearly this kind of thing was weighing on her for a while, and it upset her. And you know, you look at the picture, my first thing, okay, that's, you know, it's humiliating because you don't know that it's happening. But if he's touching her, then that's actual assault. But I can't tell if he's touching her or not. But regardless, it is a humiliating thing that somebody's doing something without your knowledge. And of course, that's separate from what else he did when he forced a kiss from her in the green room, which I happen to think she's telling the truth because look what we're seeing there. My sense is that there's going to be more of these stories, and they're going to affect all occupations. And I think that there needs to be some kind of process. And one of the encouraging things out of this one that I see is that she came forward with this. He apologized. She accepted his apology, which I find kind of interesting. Could this be the start of a new process in dealing with these problems? Because right now, in the realm of public opinion, everything's equal. All men are created equal, but not all accusations are equal. We have no way of prioritizing what is severe and what is stupid. And I think there has to be a process for this other than just saying, like, we're all putting all of this stuff in the same file. Does that make sense? I guess? Yeah. I don't know.
Totally. Jillian, what do you think about that in terms of saying there has to be a process, and perhaps this is a new sort of template or framework for how people can go forward? You make the accusation, you have the proof, the person apologized. Where do you go from there, and what do you think about this story?
Well, I think the more cases where you have a perpetrator who acknowledges what happened and then apologizes, if the victim can personally forgive them, then that is the path forward. It doesn't matter what the rest of the general public thinks. It's incumbent upon the woman who is victimized or the person who is victimized to come to terms with that. A quick point on the macro picture here is I think all of this stuff from Bill Cosby years ago through Harvey Weinstein, Roy Moore, Al Franken, this moment really highlights that I think the harassment of women and assault of women is not just a women's issue. It's something that the entire American population has to grapple with. And it's also certainly not a political issue. Too often lately, we turn to focusing on the perpetrator's identity and their politics. And that does a disservice to everybody because this is not a political issue. Rape victims, assault victims, I really don't think care. Whether the perpetrators are liberals or conservatives, Republicans or Democrats, this is a much more important issue. It sort of transcends politics. And I think our discussion, not just like here at the table, but the American discourse should reflect that.
Okay, on a more macro level, I think, yeah.
On a macro level, yeah.
Yeah, and I think these examples and these cases of people who have suffered and the victims and the allegations they make, you know, we study them, we listen, we learn, and then, like Greg said, perhaps it provides a framework going forward, and it's educational, Jesse, so people understand that, you know, this is not acceptable.
Absolutely, and he should be held accountable, which I believe he will be. And the initial apology, if anybody read it, was really bad. He trivialized it and said something along the lines of, you know, I'm really sorry that she misremembered it or remembered it differently than I did.
Right.
And then acted like it was a skit that was done in poor taste. The second apology was much better, and she accepted it. So there's no lawsuit. There's an accepted apology. Greg makes a great point because we're putting pedophilia, allegedly, drugging women, raping women, exposing yourself in a basket of a grope or a kiss or something like that unwanted. And, you know, the whole thing's a mess. So Franken has supported victims of sexual assault throughout his career, which makes him a hypocrite, but it also, for the left, makes them more reluctant to hang the guy. Now, sending Franken to the Senate Ethics Committee is a complete whitewash. The Ethics Committee cannot do a good job. They're not transparent. There's no accountability. There's only been one action taken by the Senate Ethics Committee in the last 5 years, and it was a sternly worded letter to some senator. So the Senate can't police himself. That's one thing. And Congress needs to get off its high horse because Congress, like the rest of the institutions of this country, has a problem with sexual harassment. They've settled, I believe, 260 cases since the late 90s of sexual harassment and discrimination to the tune of $15 million. That's over 10 settlements per year. That's our money. We don't know who settled these cases. We have a right to know since we're paying for it. So I'd like to see what those results are.
All right, get back to Jesse. Okay, Juan, so what do you think of the allegations, you know, today, what happened, and also just get your thoughts on how Senator Franken reacted to them?
Well, I think he reacted pretty well, especially when he apologized. I think that was appropriate. And, you know, the thing about it is that this was on some USO tour. I'm not sure what's going on between entertainers and the like. But what was clear, and I think this is picking up on what Greg said, if she felt that somehow he had crossed the line, then she deserved an apology. It should be clear that in doing her job, she does not have to put up with that kind of foolishness. But I would say to you, Kimberly, that this comes in an atmosphere that really is at the moment Harvey Weinstein and now Roy Moore down in Alabama. The political context is so important for us at this moment. And in that context, we see things like the liberals, and I'll speak to that as the Democrat here, liberals saying, hey, you know what, we should have paid attention to Bill Clinton. Oh, my gosh, a writer for Vox, a writer for the New York Times saying, you know, I'm going back and I'm looking back on this, and I believe Juanita Broderick and all the rest.
Right.
So, and I think to myself, why is this going on? Why is the left doing this? I think the left is doing this because they fear that Republicans, the conservatives, will say, hey, you didn't go after your guys, but you want to go after Judge Moore. Right. And therefore, you're a hypocrite. How dare you do this?
And let's get to Judge Moore. Thank you, Juan.
But can I finish this point?
Oh, yes. You
sure.
Did
so, but my point to you is, I think that when you look at what's going on the right with Judge Moore at the moment, you see the same kind of, I don't know, what angst or upset President Trump today. Can't say a word. Not say a word. Guess what? Steve Bannon still can't say a word. But Drudge says Steve Bannon was, nope. Then Breitbart comes back and says, fake news coming from Drudge. No, Steve Bannon is not abandoning Roy Moore. And we see in the polls, Moore's number is going down, but I don't see any big change in terms of the Republican Party establishment on Moore. And I think Republicans, in some extent, are delighting in the troubles that now beset Al Franken and say, oh, this is equivalent. Well, again, Greg's point, this ain't equivalent.
All right, well, Juan, I was going to you on this. Embattled Republican Senate hopeful Roy Moore appeared before cameras today, and he vowed to remain in the Alabama race and wants Senate Majority Leader to go.
This is an effort by Mitch McConnell and his cronies to steal this election from the people of Alabama, and they will not stand for it. Well, I want to tell you who needs to step down. That's Mitch McConnell. I'll quit standing when they lay me in that box and put me in the ground.
The White House weighed in on the Moore controversy earlier.
Does the president believe Roy Moore's accusers, and does he think Roy Moore should drop out of this race?
Look, the president believes that these allegations are very troubling. and should be taken seriously. And he thinks that the people of Alabama should make the decision on who their next senator should be.
How would the president like to see that truth proven?
Look, I'm not going to get into and litigate back and forth, but the president's been clear that if any of these allegations are true, allegations that he takes very seriously, finds very troubling, if those do happen to be true, then he should do the right thing and step aside.
Okay, so find the White House issuing a statement on this.
I think that when it comes to Moore, I said this yesterday, but I really meant it, like the writing's on the wall. You know, Lindsey Graham said the other day to the press, I think he needs to step down, step aside for the good of himself, his family, and the state. I think what he really meant, though, was he needs to step aside for the good of the Republican Party.
Sure.
Because there is no good solution here for the party. Having a sitting senator, if he wins, having a sitting senator who's plagued by allegations of sexual misconduct is a nightmare. And I think that also having a Senate that votes that if he wins and the Senate votes to expel him with a 2/3 majority vote, that's even worse in a sense, because then he becomes the first senator since like the Civil War, since the 19th century to be expelled, and the first one ever to be expelled for these kinds of charges. So it's just, he's an albatross around the GOP's neck at this point.
All right, Jess, real quick.
Quickly, Juan said that the Republican establishment really is not doing much with Moore. Every single Republican senator has pulled their endorsement of Moore, and all of the money from the RNC and the Senate Republican Conference, that's dried up. To say that there's been no movement there is just wrong. Now, Moore's being selfish to hang in here. The guy's got to go. Obviously, even if Donald Trump himself said Moore's got to go, I think Moore might still stay in there. Juan also brought up the Clinton situation, and that's interesting because I'd like to talk about that. Multiple women had consensual affairs with Bill Clinton. That's not the issue. It was the Juanita Broderick accusation of rape. She actually had a friend who said afterwards she saw her with a bloody mouth and she was rattled. You had a settlement with Paula Jones for almost $1 million for sexual harassment. And then Kathleen Wiley said she was groped in the White House. Now, right now, you don't see Republicans trying to destroy the accusers personally in the Alabama situation yet. During those when the women came through with these allegations against Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton herself called Monica a narcissistic Looney Tune. Hillary Clinton called Jennifer Flowers a failed cabaret singer. And James Carville famously said of Jennifer Flowers, drag a $100 bill through a trailer park, you never know, you'll find Stephanopoulos. Even said, these are just bimbos. Remember the whole bimbo eruption? And you had Gloria Steinem, feminist icon, defend Bill Clinton.
So you
in a New York Times op-ed.
Chelsea Handler apologized to Anita Broderick.
She did. A lot of people say that's too little too late, but I'm glad she finally did.
I thought it was commendable.
You misunderstood what I was saying to you.
I would never do that.
The Republican establishment, in fact, is Mitch McConnell and people like Mitch McConnell and the senators who have all condemned Roy Moore. So that's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about people like Steve Bannon, the reluctance on the part of President Trump.
You did say.
Right. So this is where you see that there are people, including in the state of Alabama, the Alabama Republican Party, that is reluctant to say, you know what, we've got a problem. This is damaging, as Jillian said, to the Republican brand. It's people who are in the so-called Republican establishment who see that broader picture and say, you know what, you might have a grievance against the media. You might have a grievance against the liberals, but this is damaging to the GOP.
Right, Greg?
I would agree.
Real quick, final thought.
I think I got to go to this larger point that is bigger than what's happening with Moore or Franken. The media has yet to discern differences in scale.
Correct.
In the court of public opinion. This is now officially allegation nation. And we lack the deliberate body to assess matters. So it's going to come and it's going to hurt everybody unless we learn to find a process that says when the allegation happens, instead of it being followed by media hysteria, that there is some kind of deliberate way of assessing it. And I think, I mean, what you're seeing with Franken is at least the beginning of something, because you saw she came out with it, he responds, she accepts it. I don't know where it goes from there, but at least it's something. Seems like progress. Right. I don't know.
That's a big difference between that, though, and messing with a 14-year-old
That's
girl.
what I'm talking about. But then my point is this. It's all put in the same file.
That's wrong.
George Herbert Walker Bush has just got accused again for grabbing a woman's
Yeah,
butt.
I saw that.
And you see that's lumped in. Dustin Hoffman was accused of saying something creepy to an intern. That's lumped in.
With rape.
Which
is crazy.
Yeah, we're in the media. We're throwing it all into one pot, stirring it up.
All right. Well, after that discussion, you may not know that